Hi everyone, welcome back. Hope you had a good lunch break. I'm not going to have a formal introduction to this session because most of the participants at the tables have been here, or I think all of the participants have previously been here, but for the benefit of those of you who have joined us for the first time today, there are some important rules that I'm going to ask Charlotte Glancy to read out. Thank you.
Afternoon, everybody. This is just a couple of very short things in relation to fire drills and the sessions being recorded. So there are no scheduled fire drills. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main entrance doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point, located beyond the Town Hall multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you're unable to use the stairs, please wait in the chamber and you'll be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. These hearing sessions are being filmed and recorded to be later uploaded on the Council's YouTube site. So to be aware that the Council is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy, and these specific sessions will be retained for at least 2 years. Any individual seated around the chamber and in the public gallery will be filmed by the automated camera system, and your image may be captured. Therefore, by entering the room, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or trading purposes. And just if anyone doesn't know where the toilets are, the men's are to the right out these doors and the ladies are to the left. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. My name's Glenn Rawlings. This is David Spencer. We're the inspectors that have been appointed to examine this local plan. Charlotte's the independent program officer. You might have come across her already, but she's the first point of contact if there are any queries, and she's working for the inquiry and is very helpful. We're here this afternoon to, first of all, some introductions to people participating today. Starting from the council, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Anthony Masson. I'm a Senior Planning Officer at Crawley Borough Council. Alongside me today we have Clark Gordon, who is the Water Neutrality Project Manager, and my colleague Ian Warren, who's a Senior Planning Officer also.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the back row who wants to speak today? Great, okay. And we'll, to my left. Hello.
Good afternoon, sir. Mark Barron from the Home Builders Federation.
Mark Hendy, Planning Manager for Persimmon Homes.
Afternoon, sirs. Today I am Suzanne Holloway, representing Chichester College Group at Crawley College site.
Are you sure you don't want to sit at the front?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Got
thanks.
used to this spot.
Thank you. Right. The bad news is we're probably not going to make it till 5 o'clock. But the good news is it'll be a shorter session. So, I think that's a reasonable bad news, good news split. We're here today to discuss Matter 8, Issue 2 of our Matters, Issues and Questions, which is the issue of water neutrality. As has come out in the evidence, this is a fairly novel approach that's Crawley's trailblazing in. It's going to be followed in by other authorities in the area as their local plans come forward. But what has happened to date has been in consultation with those authorities. And we commend the work that's been done to date. We are aware that there's been other visits, advisory visits by inspectors. But just to reiterate, the local plan examination process is separate and we may reach our own conclusions. But certainly in terms of the level proposed, this is an issue that is new to us as well. So we find it quite novel, and we're fully expecting to be asked about it when we go back to the inspectorate, and probably asked to give a presentation at a training session or something. So we hope to take stuff away from this as well as required by the examination. One other point is that although in the agenda we mentioned that SD4 is the one under examination, I think it would be useful to bring SD3 into it as well, the water stress policy, rather than examining it at a later date. So unless there are any objections to that, we'll proceed on that basis.
Would it be worth doing a quick clarification on SDC3 as well then, just to set out the sort of the background behind that?
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of policy SDC3, that relates to the recognition that we're essentially Crawley's in an area of serious water stress, as recognised by the Environment Agency. So the existing local plan, recognising that serious water stress, already sets a standard of 110 litres per person per day for new homes, etc. So that's a recognition of that standard. Policy SDC4 essentially deals with water neutrality. So that's a slightly separate issue, and obviously one that we've been working jointly to find a way forward on. For I suppose the delineation between the two is the water neutrality policy applies within the Southern Water Sussex North Water Resource Zone. So within that zone we would be looking for the 85 litres per person per day standard. Outside of that zone, Crawley would still is still subject to serious water stress. So outside of that zone, but within the borough boundary, the 110 litre per person per day standard would be the one that's sought and that applies.
Can you hear me? Good, thank you. Thanks very much. We're aware that the proposed standards come along fairly late in the day in the plan making process, the 85 per litres standard. Are there any other plan? The other plan policies were obviously prepared earlier. Have you checked in terms of any potential conflict with any other plan in the policy?
Thank you. In terms of other planning policies, we believe that it can be applied consistently. It works with the other plans. I think the key objective has been essentially to unlock development. We know that when the water neutrality position statement dropped effectively, it effectively stopped development unless there was another way that could be identified to address that. Some developers have been able to address it where they're proposing effectively a change of use that has demolished one type of use and then is proposing a less water intensive use. So there's been ways around that, but I think as both the councils and the development industry have got to grips with this, there's been some more interesting, innovative approaches. Everyone's been trying to find their way forward on this. Certainly from the councils, the local authorities' joint point of view, we've been looking to develop an offsetting scheme, which would be an opportunity essentially to unlock the development from the local plans in particular. So that's been that objective. With regards to it, essentially, you're right. It did come along. It was actually the reason that the plan was delayed quite significantly. Was trying to find a way forward on this to demonstrate that we were satisfying the habitat regulations. So that's fed into additional work, particularly in terms of viability. We have sort of revisited elements of the viability work. It's probably an opportune moment to hand over to my colleague Ian Warren, who's able to provide an update on that work.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about viability if you're happy to sort of move on to that aspect of the policy. Excellent. Yes, so we've considered the proposed on-site water efficiency requirements from a viability perspective, and we do think they're viable, and we've sort of set this out in detail in our from a technical and viability perspective in our answers to questions 8.9, 8.10, 8.11 of the matters, issues and questions. And these refer back to further detail that's provided in the water neutrality study parts B and C. That's references ES, SDC 06 and 05. The Crawley Local Plan Viability Assessment Update and Appendix, that's DSVA 01A and 01. The BREEAM New Construction Technical Manual, that's PSES SDC 19, and also Historical Code for Sustainable Homes Guidance, PSES SDC 18. So taking the residential standard first, so the water neutrality study part C, particularly section 432, paragraphs 90 to 103 on pages 20 to 22, it identifies that there are different technical options for achieving this with varying costs associated with them, and this was on the basis of the information that that our consultants were able to establish in preparing that part of the study. So they identified that it could be done using a fittings-only approach, and this is where the 85 figure is achieved by specifying particular types of water-consuming appliances, so they have a particular level of efficiency. And the study sets two different costs that are identified in association with this approach. One of them sort of with an upper end of £431 per dwelling, but with another one that was an upper end of £1,531 per dwelling. And really the development, the difference between those is to do with washing machines and dishwashers. And so basically the difference is the cost of providing those, so whether you count, if you count it as as an additional development cost arising from the policy, then that higher figure is the applicable one in relation to that. And then in addition to that, it talks about the option of having grey water recycling with a higher cost range between £4,000 to £4,340 per dwelling. So basically these different options and costs have informed the figure of £2,000 per dwelling, which has been used in the viability update, the viability assessment update and appendix. Now that figure is intended to cover both the costs of the on-site water efficiency measures, and that's based on an expectation of how these will average out across the dwelling mix, and the additional costs of offsetting, so come within that figure. It's relevant to note that that £2,000 input has been agreed between the different authorities who are a party to the work, and we highlight that in the joint water neutrality topic paper. That's reference DSTP 00A in paragraph 4.6. So Crawley's viability assessment update models this against a kind of representative sample of residential typologies. So there's a kind of borough-wide or kind of medium-sized, I suppose, greenfield topology, a medium-sized brownfield development, and also a more strategic-sized greenfield type residential development. In doing that, the viability assessment update made some other changes as well that weren't linked to water neutrality, but which, happy to go into, or we can pick that up under the other when viability at a plan-wide level is picked up within the hearings. But just to highlight that in relation to the typologies that were looked at as part of that, with the sort of medium-sized greenfield one, the consultants found that so the quotation from paragraph 323 of that update. So they say the indications are that the policy set with the addition now of water neutrality criteria remains supportable from a viability point of view. In relation to the brownfield town centre typology, they say that the findings again indicate the suitability of the policy set from a viability perspective, although at the same time they observe that the findings also support another change that we've done, which is the lower affordable housing requirement in the town centre. Since this work has been done, there have been various residential schemes that have been kind of making their way through the planning process with the benefit of offsets that have been created through, particularly through the retrofitting of housing stock managed by Crawley Homes. So we are starting to see these kind of technical options that are identified in the study actually kind of tested in the real world, and that's, you know, we're making progress with that. So there are two. We've had two schemes that have been signed off by Natural England, where they have a solution that involves grey water recycling. So that's the Breezehurst playing field site in Bewbush and the Longley House site in the town centre. So those are basically held up at the moment by Section 106, work on the conclusion of the Section 106, but the water neutrality aspect of that has been agreed by Natural England. And incidentally, with the work done on those, suggests that in the context of a kind of flatted scheme, grey water recycling can be achieved at a lower cost than the one that's indicated in the water neutrality Part C study. And then more recently, there are two schemes which I understand are due to go to the planning committee in December. One is an outline application for the Telford, relating to the Telford Place Key Town Centre Opportunity Site, where again they've had their appropriate assessment agreed by Natural England, and they've been able to achieve it without grey water recycling on the basis of a fittings approach. And there's another item that's going to the committee in relation to the Formula Ambulance station in West Green in Crawley. That's a smaller 39 dwelling flat scheme, I think, where there again they've been able to use an approach that is just based on the fittings. So we do think the viability of evidence and approach is sound in relation to the 85 litres per person per day requirement. Happy to talk a bit about the non-residential aspect.
Yeah, we'll come on to that, I think.
Okay.
It would be helpful for us, I think, to learn a bit about the practical application of the different levels and how they affect, for example, a typical homeowner. Because of the upgraded appliances and fittings, is it noticeable that there is a lesser water take or water use between 110 and 85, for example? Would a typical resident notice the difference? Would it have an impact on the general way they go about their day?
We don't believe so. I mean, these schemes that I was referring to, they're still at a certain stage in the process, so they've yet to be built. But we've done other work in terms of retrofitting existing properties, and the results there, seem to suggest that there isn't really disturbance of the kind of user experience. I don't know if either of you would like to say any more about that.
Yeah, just to say on the trial side of this, so the Crawley Homes trial, obviously it's completely down to those tenants whether they wanted to take those measures on. My understanding is that the feedback in terms of after the measures have been installed, sort of tenants then phoning up the company that installed to complain. I think there was, my understanding is there was one person that complained about low flow out of the sort of so far 1,000 plus that have been installed. So yeah, there's not been any pushback from tenants so far of the trial that's taken place.
And we understand it's made water and energy bills lower as well for them. So that's sort of, you know, Crawley Homes are quite happy from that perspective as well.
I was actually going to raise the same point that Mr. Warren did. So.
And in terms of the split between indoor and outdoor use, what sort of, I've seen a lot about restricting indoor use. What sort of elements are in play to restrict outdoor use on homes that need garden watering, for example?
I guess with houses with kind of private outdoor amenity space, the most sensible go-to option in relation to that is sort of butts for rainwater, and I think that was the approach that was adopted in relation to the Breezehurst scheme in relation to the houses and masonettes for that. So they, you know, their proposal was that they would address their outdoor water needs through rainwater.
So it's your expectation that the overall 85 litre limit won't be affected by how much outdoor space a house has or a flat has?
That's correct.
You touched briefly on the offsetting measures, some of the offsetting measures that have been taken to date. How have they been pilot measures? How successful has offsetting been to date? Generally, are the measures that you've taken the ones that you're going to continue with?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yes, so we've been working with a company called Synergist. What they've done is they have what's called a flow regulator. So effectively, it does what it says. It regulates the flow of water into properties. That has a water-saving effect. So the way we have done it, there was an initial pilot project. I think from memory it was 2021. Yes, 21. So we worked with. I think it was an initial. I think it was about 200 homes. To test the effectiveness of that, working with the residents. That was we wrote to them, identified certain properties. Again, through that pilot project, we looked to identify a mix of properties within the Crawley Homes portfolio, essentially to look at different options. Having seen the initial success of that, we then rolled out the pilot project to, I think it was 1,000 homes in total. So again, that expanded it. It gave us a sort of a broader sample group, effectively. And again, that was found to be successful as well. So that's the basis that we've been working on. And yeah, I mean, say the flow regulators have been fitted. As Mr. Gordon mentioned, they are doing. You know, they've been, I think, positively received by residents. I think one of the interesting points was, as Mr. Warren mentioned as well, has been the energy saving impacts that's had for bills. So that's it. There's been an initial pilot phase before the wider rollout.
Thank you. Just to confirm, Natural England's had a part in this process, haven't they, in the formulation of the offsetting and the overall approach. Is it still their position that they support the current measures?
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect timing actually, because we had an email last week from Natural England to clarify that for the installation of the control flow regulator devices, they have accepted the 27 litres per person per day saving that was demonstrated through the Crawley Homes trials. They've now accepted that as a standard, if you like, that could be rolled out more widely. So we've now got that accepted with Natural England. Natural England sit as part of our governance structure, so they're being kept fully informed about other offsetting measures and potential pilots that will be coming forward as well. So they'll be kept fully informed through our governance.
Sorry, just one more from me. Just to pick up as well, we have a joint statement of common ground as well that's worth mentioning. That's between the local authorities who are involved with water neutrality. It's also endorsed by Natural England Environment Agency and Southern Water as well. So there's different sections at the back of it, but essentially that's agreed to a joint approach to tackling this issue.
Thank you. There was a comment from Mr. Berendt about the potential for a policy review if it was found that there were other abstraction methods or any other form of water collection were to be found during the plan period, and whether that would trigger a review of the plan or a review of the policy. What are your comments on that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to pick that up. Yes, there's actually a reference in the plan at paragraph 1.37 which commits to a review of the water neutrality approach. That's obviously conditional on Southern Water finding a long-term strategic water supply solution to the issues that we've got in the sub-region at the moment. I believe that's currently being proposed by Southern Water to take place by 2030, but I will refer to yes, 2030. So that's the timetable they are working towards. But I think we appreciate they've obviously got their water resource management plans to get through as well. So which has been delayed. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit of a moving feast in terms of the time frames for this. But I know obviously it's something they are looking at. It's something that the councils responded jointly to the Southern Water consultation on their water resource management plan. And I think we wanted to get home the message that water neutrality is obviously a hugely significant issue for ourselves as planning authorities, but also the development industry more widely. So we wanted that to be fed in, and I think that again they're looking at options through that process.
Thank you, sir. Yes, yeah, it was a point raised. I think recognising that whilst it is in the supporting text, it's whether actually something more clarity is needed within policy itself, rather than just within a monitor and view section at the start of the plan. I think it's important that yes, it should be reviewed, but I think in addition, not just review is whether the policy is applicable. Should there be a change from the point of which that change occurs, and actually it's just written within the policy that this is applicable because of the situation where the council finds itself, and rather than having to wait for a review on that basis, that it's actually written within the policy. So when this is no longer required, you know, the policy essentially falls away. So I think it's just the approach to really how it's undertaken. Because obviously there were, you might remember in terms of potential changes to the law, in terms of actually how this would be applied in terms of the habitats regulations, there are other elements to it. So there are clearly elements that could come forward. And yeah, I probably wanted to be sitting here today saying that actually yes, this has been resolved through a legislative changes, but I can't be here telling you that, sir, because it didn't happen. But it is something in terms of the industry recognises that this is a necessity in terms of to ensure development comes forward, whilst not particularly happy with having to, with some of it recognising actually Southern Water is and the infrastructure problems are part of the issue. A lot of the issues behind this, rather than development, it's accepting that our policy is needed, but it's ensuring that policy isn't in place. It isn't just in place perpetuity, and actually when it's not needed, it is removed from the plan. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, thank you, sir. It's. I mean, I suppose one point is that we are required to review our plans every 5 years, and we have seen that Southern Water are not anticipating any strategic level solution to this issue until at least 2030. So, you know, in principle, there would be a review of the plan within that time frame anyway. Obviously, if as inspectors you feel there's a requirement for some additional wording, we not averse to that if you feel that's necessary. I suppose the other point is obviously it's a joint policy, so our other neighbouring authorities are all at different points at their plans. So we're looking for consistency across the water resource zone. So anything that is sort of potentially suggested, it's just bearing in mind that would also probably need to be considered in the plans of others as well.
Thank you. Just going back to the point that you looked at more ambitious standards that included, I think from memory, butts and grey water recycling and things like that. Was cost and viability the primary reason for not pursuing a lower level?
I guess it was a combination of things. Certainly, were we to have gone with the lower target, was it 62 litres per person per day, that would have significantly limited the kind of technical options available and had a kind of cost implication. And I guess there's a potential uncertainty about to what extent that standard is kind of workable in the real world in kind of technical terms. You know, the point you raised about the user experience, whether that might have some undesirable consequences. So a combination of issues really that moved us towards the 85.
And sorry, Mr. Ellis.
And I think just to follow on for that, I think one of the key findings of the water neutrality strategy, the Part C reports, was that at the 85 litres standard, there'd be sufficient capacity to be able to meet the local plan growth needs. So actually there wasn't necessarily a need to go lower than that on the site, that there should be sufficient offsetting capacity to be able to meet the local plan growth needs even at that 85 standard. So it's almost like there wasn't a need to actually go lower than that 85 standard to meet the local plan growth needs.
Apologies for the misnaming, I've put my glasses on now. And over the past few years, technology has improved, which I think had an input into the various tests that you did as well. How are you expecting that technology improvements in the future in terms of the take of appliances for water, that sort of thing, will affect the overall limit and any potential desire to lower the limit?
I think one thing that's certainly worth mentioning is that we're aware of, as well as the sort of the technological interventions, there's actually the government interventions in terms of things like mandatory water labelling of appliances, which is coming in from 2025, which is also going to offer an assistance. And I think the feedback that we're getting from industry is that that's really going to sort of drive even further water efficiency improvements in those existing appliances as well, and will give customers that choice that they currently don't actually have. So I think from that aspect of 2025 as well, we will start to see lower, better, higher water efficiency standards, fittings being fitted in there as well.
Thank you. I'm not a fan of asking political-based questions, but I think that given that this is such a novel situation that you find yourself in, you've got political support for the current policy, presumably. Is there any chance that if there is a change in council or other factors may come into play, such as unpopularity from residents or some sort of anything could happen in the future. What sort of potential is there for this to be revoked or reversed in the future? And could that happen? And what would be the effect?
Sorry, thinking about that one. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think in terms of, as sort of my colleagues have mentioned, we've really received largely positive feedback from residents where the flow regulators have been installed. I think through our discussions with Natural England, I think they have an acceptance that where water efficient fixtures and fittings are fitted, they may eventually be removed over time. So the calculations in the water neutrality assessment actually do pick up they input effectively into the formula something that would allow a buffer for some of the fittings being removed over time. So it sort of is baked into the numbers to a degree that we know that some people may just change their shower over time, or for example. So there is a recognition within that there may be some people that remove fittings.
Just to add on to that as well, I think I can imagine that part of the reason for your question is the issue around the nutrient neutrality, and obviously there was a big push to remove that through primary legislation. I think there's a slight difference with the nutrient side of things, that it's known that issue can be resolved through sewage treatment works upgrades, which are obviously part of the LURA as well. We don't have the same indication. I think because nutrients is such a widespread geographical issue, I think it's affecting something around 70 local authorities. It's obviously seen as quite a high priority by government, whereas at the moment I don't think the water neutrality issue is seen as quite the same high priority issue. Obviously we are the first area that are facing this issue under the habitats regs requirements. We are seeing it potentially coming forward in other areas as well now, but I don't think you would have quite the same mechanism to remove that requirement through primary legislation, because ultimately it's about delivering those new water sources, which the water companies are already programmed in through their water resource management plans. It's just that unfortunately they're not coming forward quickly enough to remove the water neutrality requirement of planning.
I was thinking also whether the HRA regulations had the potential to change during the lifetime of the plan, so I think that's useful in that regard. Thank you. Looking at the commercial side now, you've supplied some examples, 3 or 4 examples of commercial developments that have aimed for the BREEAM Excellent rating within the last 3 or 4 within the last 5 years, I think. Have you relates to residential as well. What sort of signals have you had from the development industry that this is something that they're willing to support?
I mean, certainly I'll obviously let my colleagues over there speak as well, but certainly from our point of view in Crawley, there's not been sort of particular pushback. It's actually been the opposite. I think when the position statement came in, it essentially stopped development. So we've had a situation where, for example, a commercial building came forward. It had I think it was a resolution to grant permission, but it didn't have its permission at that time. There was conditions that needed to be discharged. They built it out anyway, but they couldn't occupy because they hadn't dealt with their water neutrality situation. So we were able to make some credits available to that scheme, and they were obviously incredibly keen to find a solution to the issues they were dealing with. So they were able to sort of purchase some credits. So I think certainly I think the way development has essentially been sort of stopped almost. Our experience in dealing with developers, dealing with applicants, is that they have been keen to find ways to unlock the development, as have we, because we want to meet our local plan numbers and deliver new homes and new business. So I think it's been positive. I think initially I think there was I think probably concerns from all parties involved as to to why this had happened as we sort of grappled with the issues. But I think generally now there is an understanding of why water neutrality needs to be addressed, and certainly in our experience, an acceptance from the development industry that we need to find a way forward on this. And actually, the local authority scheme is one way of achieving that. There are other options as well that the development industry has obviously been looking at in different applications. But yeah, I mean, I think generally it's been a sort of a positive response that we're trying to find a way forward on this.
Is the purchase of credits widespread? Is it something? Is there a trend in purchase of water credits, and what's the overall impact on offsetting and in terms of the big picture?
So the offsetting scheme through the Part C work, it obviously factors in development in the plans. Within Crawley, we actually took quite a precautionary approach with the figures in Part C. So we included a lot of the employment development that was identified, which obviously we've been discussing. Actually, if the Gatwick Green allocation were to come forward, that's actually outside of the water resource zone. So you do have the benefit of a number of the calculations that are factored into that Part C become freed up. So whilst we've taken a precautionary approach because we wanted to test the whole plan, but actually a lot of our employment growth that's factored into those calculations is outside of the water resource zone. During the process of the plan, Southern Water actually rezoned an area of the Sussex North Zone to Sutton and East Surrey. I think they're called SES Water now. So effectively there was a chunk taken out of the Manor Royal area. So that's enabled employment to come forward. A lot of the economic applications have been outside, but saying that, we are aware that a lot of Manor Royal also remains within the water resource zone. So it is relevant and appropriate to count some of our employment growth within that. But it's just a factor in. There's a little bit of flexibility, I think, within the numbers.
And is industry awareness of credits and offsetting fairly widespread in your experience?
It's getting out there. I think what we are finding, one of the findings of the Part C report was that there wasn't a sufficient private market of credits, if you like, and that was the part of the reason why one of the recommendations was to have a local authority-led offsetting scheme to plug that gap. Since the publication of the Part C report, what we are finding is there are more private credit schemes or early stages of some credit schemes coming forward, and private developers looking to use sort of their own third-party measures as well. So actually, where the Part C report suggested that there wasn't much of a private market, that is starting to emerge as well, which is actually going to potentially reduce some of the burden on the local authority offsetting scheme as well. Obviously, some of the costs for those private credits are quite high, certainly higher than we would be looking for through the authority offsetting scheme, but it obviously does give some options for some developers to move forwards earlier than they would be able to with the reliance on the local authority offsetting scheme, which obviously isn't launched yet.
Thank you. Just on the next agenda item then, I'm looking to this side of the table now, and I got the impression from my reading of the evidence that there was a bit of a pull between unlocking housing development and the extra costs that would be put onto the end user by yourselves. And just wondering how you're just wondering how you're coming to terms with that, and what your current feelings are.
In terms of the additional costs, I think it's important that there is some uncertainty in terms of what those costs are actually going to be. And I think in terms of what Mr. Gordon just referred to there, in terms of private sector providers and the higher level of cost, obviously there is prioritisation required within the council's own scheme in terms of what sites will come forward. So it's not necessarily that all sites will have that opportunity to access that type of provision. So I think it's important that there is flexibility across the plan. I think there is some flexibility within the affordable housing policy, for example, in terms of exceptional circumstances. Whether these are exceptional, whether actually there's just circumstances, and whether that needs to be slightly reworded, so it might be one aspect. But I think there is a concern that there is uncertainty as to what these costs will be until they arrive at. And so I think the 85 litres per person per day, for example, is something that is not a regular approach that is taken, and so it is something new that we will have to deal with, and have to see what the costs are. It's in recognising that there examples have come forward where it has been deliverable at scale, and those aspects will have to be looked at. I think going below 85, I think there will be significant difficulties. I think there is concern still in terms of going down to 85 of that customer experience with regard to that, and whether there's sufficient flows for removing waste and those elements. I think it sounds like that the council have looked at that in terms of the what would you call it, tests in terms of lower levels, but I think going below that there might be significant concerns as to whether that is actually livable, and whether the customer experience will be significantly impacted going below 85. Obviously concerns going about 110. I think 110 is something that, especially I think in the southeast, where it is water stress, that the industry's got used to and accepts. But below that, it will be more challenging with regard to that. But recognising it'll have to be delivered in terms of reducing the impact and ensuring that we have sufficient credits to allow development to come forward. So we're in a bit of a bind, but I think it's ensuring that there is flexibility within the local plan and within the council itself to recognise those costs and to take them into account. Looking at the viability study recognised, especially in those urban areas, the difficulties in terms of the challenging viability, the need for negotiation. I think within paragraph, I think it's within the conclusions of the viability update, a balance is required in terms of expectations on planning for infrastructure and obligations is necessary, recognising that there is that balance needed in terms of consideration. And these costs, especially if they go beyond the £2,000 that's been included within the council, we don't know what they may be. If there is a different provider in terms of credits, that the impact that will be. So ensuring that there is that flexibility, sir.
I'm interested in the council's response, and in particular with the point on affordable housing that Mr. Barrett made.
I think it's probably. I mean, I'm wondering if it's perhaps more of a, because the £2,000. I think Mr. Barrett was referring to the conclusions of the viability report, where it's taking into account a range of other issues in addition that were thought worth revisiting since the original report had been issued. So changes to property values. There was an adjustment to take into account costs of providing electric vehicle charging spaces, and so. Wrapping up there, they were acknowledging that while they thought that the overall policy package is deliverable, they acknowledge at the same time the current climate with the higher interest rates and the kind of what we've seen in terms of house prices. At the same time, there's the point that this is a plan that's meant to operate over a longer period, over a longer economic cycle. I mean, I don't see on that basis. I'm not sure we would see the kind of viability impacts of water neutrality in isolation as being of kind of very great significance in comparison to the wider kind of policy package in the plan, really. So a discussion about kind of costs and flexibility and so on, and the affordable housing policy, you know, from our perspective, that might be better to address in the kind of discussion on the affordable housing policy and whole plan viability.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Masson, sorry.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just a quick point as well. Southern Water obviously are looking to I suppose implement their own water efficiency measures as well. So we know they have a programme of sort of universal metering they're looking to install. I think they do leakage reduction measures and home visits as well to encourage residents to save water. But essentially that is considered within the Part C work, the contribution that Southern Water are able to make. So the outcome of that is that in terms of the equation in the local plan, it's only asking, I think it's 12% of the water demand to be met by the industry. The rationale is that Southern Water, through its own responsibilities, will be providing the other 88%. I hope I've got those figures correct, but it's actually a sort of a relatively small element of that overall need is factored into the equation.
The current CBC ones are providing 100%.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Sorry, very subtly reminded by my colleague there. But in Crawley at the moment, we're actually, because the SNOWS scheme is not operational at the moment, we're actually seeing that effectively 100% is being provided by the industry. So again, when Southern Water when they start banking the savings from their own interventions, then that's a factor as well. But I think as it stands, they're looking to again. I think Southern Water's savings that they've been looking to implement, I think currently they're in a deficit almost at the moment, because I think sort of during the pandemic they weren't able to make the home visits they would normally make to recover some of those water efficiency savings, etc. So they're looking at being in a surplus by 2025. So from that day onward, we should start seeing the Southern Water contributions to the overall savings being factored in as well.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you, sir. It's just more of a bit of a wider industry comment, if I may. You'll understand that many of our clients were rather frustrated, as were all the local authorities, when the announcement came regarding water neutrality. I think we'd say that we'd welcome all the cross-working that's been done and support the statement of common ground between all the authorities and Southern Water and Natural England. For us in the industry, there are a number of solutions, but let's not shy away from the fact that there's an extra frustration or a hurdle in terms of development delivery. We are finding it much easier, and I just think it's a sort of a wider point. We are finding clearly it much easier on a brownfield site to look at any efficiencies or reductions, but any greenfield opportunities are clearly further sort of reduced or constrained. I just think it's an important point if that's the right time to make it, sir.
In what way are they constrained? What's an example?
So a number of our clients are able to bring forward development or are at different stages in the process in terms of having an existing use on site in which you can offset. So obviously you can look at ways of reducing any water usage compared to what you used to, but clearly that's not the case with greenfield sites. So it's not so much of an issue for my clients in Crawley, but particularly in the other northern western housing market areas. It's clearly quite hard for any developer then to be able to work out. So we're looking at a hierarchy in terms of, reducing, offsetting, but then what? So it's just a wider point, I think, in the sort of the biggest thing of the issue of water neutrality. Thank you, sir.
Any response from the council on that point?
I mean, just the point about there being a kind of benefit in, you know, in favour in terms of brownfield versus greenfield. Yes, I mean that would be that would be the experience that we would recognise, that we've had. I mean those schemes that so far have been able to obtain planning permission on a water neutral basis have been ones that have been able to rely on a existing water use on site, that they've been able to kind of net off their water usage. Yes, so that's something we would acknowledge.
Could I just add as well that obviously that won't be all greenfield sites as well, so there are certainly some greenfield sites where you've got existing uses like golf courses or agricultural uses that you may be able to do similar offsetting as well, but we do certainly acknowledge your point.
Okay, then looking at the offsetting scheme in more detail, what input has Southern Water had into the offsetting process, if any?
They are, again, part of our governance structure, and I also have a technical monthly meeting with Southern Water as well. Southern Water have recently employed a new water neutrality lead, who's my direct opposite, so she started maybe 3 months ago. So I'm working now very closely with her on the development of the scheme. They have provided data to us for the strategy, the Part C report, so that was what Anthony was referring to earlier in terms of their contribution that they will be providing from 2025. They provided that data to us. Again, we are now waiting on their updated water resource management plan consultation, so we are awaiting updated data from them on that. One aspect is that they are doing, as part of their offsetting, some offsetting in commercial premises as well, so that does slightly limit some of the opportunities that the scheme, the snow scheme, may be able to use. We want to make sure that we're not stepping onto their toes in terms of the offsetting, so that we're not double counting any benefits. We need to make sure that we're doing that to meet those HABS regs requirements.
As a commercially focused organisation, as Southern Water are there any potential points of conflict with the work that you and the other councils are doing?
I think it's one thing that it's important to say is that the offsetting scheme, as per one of our modifications that we've requested, is actually being run by the local authorities and not by the local planning authorities. So actually those commercial aspects are being considered as part of the scheme as well, and it maintains that arm's length relationship, if you like, to the local all the planning teams of all the affected authorities. I think that answers the question.
It does, thank you. And how will information about offsetting schemes across the entire WIZ be shared amongst authorities? What's the current process in place, or is there something that will be put in place?
Do you mean for the local authority offsetting scheme, or?
Yes.
So again, we've got various sort of working groups on this. I actually head up the offsetting implementation group, which is a fortnightly group which has representatives from all of the authorities, and again it involves members of staff from strategic planning teams, from development management teams, from housing teams, and others. The authorities are kept up to date through that way. We've then got our sort of lead officer group, so it's being kept up to date at that lead officer level, and then at our executive boards level as well. So hopefully internally everyone is sort of fully aware of where the scheme is at the present time, the updates that are coming forward. So if not fortnightly, then monthly updates are going out to all of the authorities. We've recently launched the first project newsletter, which, although intended for an external audience, has got several dozen, I think, internal people signed up as well. So we are making sure that our internal comms on how the scheme will operate is just as strong as our external comms on that. Obviously, we want to be as open and transparent internally and externally as we can once we've got certain aspects of the scheme finalised, particularly the more important aspects of the scheme, as Mark mentioned earlier, the prioritisation, how we're going to prioritise which applications get access to the limited credits within the scheme. Once those aspects have been agreed, we'll be looking to publicise those out to industry to make it clear what the requirements will be on them as well.
And where is that information available to be shared? Will there be like a central database, or will it be a website?
Undecided at the moment. I think at the moment it would be sending out details via things like our newsletter, via updates. As similarly, I was at HBF presentation yesterday to provide an update at that forum. I do updates via things like the Southern Water Forum, so I'm doing updates like that. I think we acknowledge that there will be a need to have some sort of central resource. What we are doing at the moment, every local authority has water neutrality set of pages, and most of any sort of key updates and most of the important updates are provided via that. As an example, Horsham District Council effectively host, if you like, the frequently asked questions for development management teams. So certainly in the first instance, we'd probably be looking to use those local authority existing water neutrality pages to provide updates.
Right. Looking at the question now of whether the policy SDC4 requires for soundness for offsetting to be placed in prior to the occupation of premises. Just wondering whether it would result in any further delay to the delivery of development for that to be necessary.
I think just in terms of the reasons for that approach is that essentially the requirement is that we need to demonstrate with certainty that there won't be impacts upon the protected habitats. So we need to be ensuring that development is not going to impact upon that. So that's why we effectively have that approach. It's to ensure there isn't a burden and a requirement to abstract more water put on the protected habitats.
Is there a bank of offsetting that has been built up so far then to help from the start of the policy, for example?
We have some. As it stands, Crawley, we're in sort of a helpful position where the council retains its own housing stock. So as a borough council, we have been able to start building that up. Since the pilot scheme, that's been ongoing. So we are accruing the savings. So in terms of the Crawley local plan, we will have sufficient savings to deliver our plan. But I think the important thing to say is that it is a collective approach. And our neighbours are looking at other options they will have to contribute to that overall pot of savings. It's slightly different in other districts, I think. Different approach. Obviously, they don't have their own stock, so there's other options that are being looked at, and sort of Clark in his role is exploring those options. But from a Crawley point of view, that's we're able to address the need. But I think also the savings from Crawley will be able to be used by others and offset the impacts from their plans as well. So I think the other thing to point out as well is that West Sussex are obviously looking to retrofit their schools and the infrastructure. I think that sort of largely wipes its own face in terms of the schools are just about able to offset the sort of the new schools side of things. So as a collective, we are looking at this, but I think the point from Natural England is that this is something that does need to be addressed cumulatively on a cross-boundary basis, which is why the local authorities have been continuing to work together on this. So Crawley is part of the solution to find the credits, and we do have a bank of them, but we're all working together to tackle this issue.
If I could just jump in as well and just add, as Anthony says, I'm currently speaking to various parties who may be able to provide offsetting opportunities. So, as an example, speaking to one of the major supermarkets in the area about potential offsetting opportunities. Already in discussions with all of the local authority property facilities asset teams about potential opportunities that there may be on existing council stock. We've begun discussions with other housing associations in the area as well. So those discussions are ongoing. We do hope, and the aim would be to build up some capacity in the scheme so that, as you suggest, once the scheme launches, there is that bank of credits available. We do know that there won't be sufficient capacity immediately to meet all of the needs, particularly because of the backlog we've got, for example. But certainly we are aiming to build up some capacity in the scheme prior to launch.
Sorry, just one more point. Just the other thing is to say we have through this process and through the governance procedure been engaging with DULUC and DEFRA, among others, so some of the government agencies, as well as Natural England Environment Agency. So we have been applying for funding, just because that would obviously help us forward fund the project. At the moment, it's being paid for sort of the council's back. So just to flag that we are seeking support from the government for this as well.
Is that partly to help tackle that backlog?
Yes, I mean, I think again, it's having the sort of the credit in place. We're conscious that obviously the nutrient authority, mumbling my words, the nutrient neutrality authorities have obviously received quite a bit of sort of central funding. It's possibly a reflection of water neutrality being a fairly new issue, but we think it's a high profile issue, and it has been holding up development in a sort of an area where there's significant demand for growth. So it's just a wider point that we are engaging with the government agencies, and we have submitted bids and requested assistance with that.
Great, thanks. One of the proposed modifications to STC4 says that offsetting will be secured through the development management process. And previously you mentioned conditions, and I was just wondering why you took that out.
I'm happy to start on that. I think it's effectively it's recognising this is a policy that's applied across different local authority areas. So I think our experience in Crawley from our development management colleagues is actually it's also been possible to secure it through a legal agreement. Yeah, we have secured it. Sorry, through a legal agreement. So it's effectively it's broadening the wording to provide that flexibility for. And a very good point has been raised. You can't apply conditions to permitted development rights, so it covers that off too.
Okay. Section 106 was the reason that I thought that you would give, but I completely forgot about permitted development, so that's very useful as well. Thanks. Doesn't often cross over with local plans. Okay. Okay, I'd like to stay on policy STC4 then, as we move on to agenda item 5. How would criterion be assessed? Criterion number 5, be assessed. So when a water neutrality statement comes in for somewhere that's outside of the WRZ, for example, what would be your process in assessing that?
So we basically, the water neutrality policy would only apply within the water neutrality zone. So if you're outside of that zone, there wouldn't be that requirement to submit a water neutrality statement. We've suggested some modifications to the policy to actually make it flow more logically. That's based on our experience of effectively dealing with applications. One of the things we do think a water neutrality statement is required for, albeit it would need to be proportional, is we have seen some developers that are within Sussex North connecting to an alternative water company. I think in that case, we obviously need it to be demonstrated with certainty. So we would expect the water neutrality statement to be provided in that situation, but I think there would be an element of proportionality to it. It would be saying we have connected with this alternative water supplier almost. So it's to show that certainty has been achieved. So we've clarified through some of the supporting text that essentially that would be proportionate, just to explain that the developer is connecting to another water company. If that makes sense.
I was just going to say, you're going to have to spell this out for me. I'm sorry. So if for example something new comes in Forgewood, what do they need to do in terms of water neutrality, if anything? What do they need to supply to you?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I mean, effectively, were there to be an application within Sussex North, were that to come forward, and they were not looking to connect to another alternative supplier at all, they were just looking to offset or looking to bring forward their development. What we would want is essentially a calculations as to the water consumption from that development, and then we would need to understand how that identified use is going to be offset with certainty. So that's essentially what we would be looking for through the water neutrality statement. It's setting out the calculations as to what they would be using and how that would be offset to demonstrate that there would be no net increase in water usage.
And is that solely as a result of your declaration of the climate emergency, or is there any other factors in play there?
I think that certainly it stems back to the habitats regulations. It's a matter of law, effectively, that development needs to be water neutral, and the water neutrality statement is the way that we're, as a local planning authority, able to determine with the sufficient certainty that requirement, that legal requirement, is being met. So we would receive the water neutrality statement from the applicant. We would certainly, from a Crawley point of view, we have our own external consultants who will review that statement. So they will form a view, in their professional opinion, as to whether that is correctly achieving water neutrality. I believe we also would ask Natural England for an opinion as well, normally on that. So that's another element of it. So effectively, the water neutrality statement is the mechanism through which we are able to determine that water neutrality is being achieved with the certainty required to satisfy the habitat regulations.
Sorry, just so I know that there's something that I haven't missed. How are the areas outside of the water resource zone affected by the HRA?
So where they're outside the habitats regulation assessment, I suppose they're provided for by another water company, and those other water companies aren't subject to the position statement. So effectively, Natural England haven't raised concerns to the extent that they would issue a statement. So those water companies are, I mean, I'm no expert on the water industry, but presumably they have demonstrated that they are able to meet their supply requirements under their existing licenses.
So what I'm wondering is whether policy STC4 puts that clearly enough, and through the modifications that you've proposed, as to what the exact requirements are for properties outside the water resource zone.
Yeah, we do say at part 1 of the policy that all development within the Sussex North Water Resource Zone will need to demonstrate water neutrality. So we do pick that up there. I think there is also, under policy SDC 3, there's a cross-reference which states that the 110 standard applies to the areas that are outside of water neutrality, and then if you're within Sussex North, then you hop to policy SDC 4, and you're subject to the requirements of that policy.
That makes it clear, thank you. Are there any other questions on this matter? Yes, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you, sir. It's not really a question, just a point of information. On Tuesday, when we were talking about duty to cooperate, there were many questions regarding the process and the stage of Mid-Sussex district plan, and that they were due to have a scrutiny committee yesterday evening. Just really as an update, I was fortunate to have done yesterday's session and then go to the committee. In terms of water neutrality, I just thought it might be helpful to know that that did pass as a sound policy from the scrutiny committee, and now progresses to the 13th of December full council. So it reiterates what Mr. Masson has been saying about cross-party working.
Thanks. Mid-Sussex in the water resource zone as well? I thought it was mostly Horsham or bits of Mid-Sussex.
Yeah, it is. Mid-Sussex effectively have quite a narrow strip that goes just slightly across their boundary. I believe they're mainly supplied by South East Water, but it's a tiny element, so they're not subject to the position statement. I don't believe it was issued to them, but again, in the sort of the spirit of joint working and the fact they have a very small area in there, we have been working closely with them.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. Hello, Mr. Handy.
If I could just come in on the Forgewood point. We are outside the zone, but it has delayed progress on our Phase 4B while officers have worked through the issue. And obviously it's taken up a lot of officer time at the Borough Council, which hasn't helped us. We've actually got written agreement with the water company, Sutton and East Surrey Water, to connect to their supply rather than the Southern Water. And we've provided letters to the council, which we were asked to do, to demonstrate that, and also a plan showing the connection point, which is at the junction of Balcombe Road and Radford Road. But I haven't had confirmation back yet that that's been accepted. But looking in the council's topic papers, I think the one that deals with housing supply seems to identify that Phase 4B isn't affected by the water neutrality issue. So really that's why I've come today, just to cover us on that point and to make you aware of how that's being dealt with at Phase 4B at Forgewood.
Could we have, are you in a position to answer that?
So, Phase 4B, as I understand, is outside the water resource zone. I'm not sure on what basis you've been. I mean, I'm not. It's a site that's, you know, a live reserve matters application. So it's with the development management team. So we haven't been directly involved. My my understanding from the, you know, just on the basis of the maps is that the phase is outside the water resource management area. There's a couple of points of, I suppose, question or uncertainty. The housing supply topic paper, there's an appendix there that's presented as a kind of 5-year housing land supply statement, and there are it sort of lists the sites and gives a statement as to whether or not they're caught by water neutrality, but that was preceding the recent legal judgment in relation to the habitat regulations, where it was determined that even a discharge of conditions application could be caught by this type of issue. So the information in that statement isn't up to date in that respect. Yes, but so I'm not totally sure what the issue is in relation to 4B. I mean, it's still reserved matters for that phase that's pending determination. I think there's perhaps an issue about it needing those undertakings with the water companies to be confirmed among all the water companies. So that may be an issue causing delay. But yes, we're sort of not really in a position to be categorical about it as more of a kind of a scheme that's currently with the development management team.
Mr. Hendies, that's outside the policy areas that we're looking at, so I don't think we'll be able to help you any further on that one. But it sounds as though you've got the ear of the council now. Mr. Ellis. Sorry, just go for it.
Thank you. Sorry, no, it's just a clarification. I think I misspoke earlier when discussing the county council position, saying that they were effectively able to completely offset. That's not the case. They are relying on the scheme, and that's why we've actually suggested wording on that. So, yeah, just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any comments on any of the other proposed modifications. I'll just confer with Mr. Spencer and see if he's got anything he wants to say.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. So, in terms of the other proposed modifications to policy SD4, there's obviously a lot of references or proposed references now to the South Downs National Park. Is this a kind of consistency across, because it's a sort of a joint policy that it's needed for kind of consistency for constituent authorities?
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, what it is because we've, as Mr. Gordon mentioned, we're looking to say, as previously worded, it said the local planning authority scheme, but it's actually the local authorities. There's that separation. It's not the planning function. The South Downs National Park is a local planning authority, but it's not a local authority, is my understanding. So we have had to have replacement wording to cover off their participation in the scheme, and that was what we came up with.
So we're still working on our double act. In terms of, just going back to the point that was raised a little while ago by Mr. Berrine on behalf of the Home Builders Federation, in terms of perhaps the lifespan of this policy, I appreciate there may be some uncertainty around that, and obviously it's from everything we've read, clearly needs to be something that's necessary now. I mean, just a general question, and the council may not be able to answer this. I mean, is there any certainty or imperative for Southern Water to kind of secure a strategic water neutrality solution when they do eventually get round to updating their water resource management plan? Will they similarly be caught by the habitat regs if they're, in terms of that as a plan or a project?
I couldn't answer the question around the habitats regs. I'd imagine they would be because it's a project or plan. but I know there are still conversations ongoing between the Environment Agency, Natural England, Ofwat and Southern Water around that. They have already given us an indication of the delivery timeline for the strategic solutions that they're bringing forward. Now, they are proposing several different solutions that are going to have to mitigate the impacts of the abstraction at Pulborough. As Mr. Weston mentioned earlier, the current indications are that the proposed solutions will be in place by 2030, although one of our most recent meetings with them, they provided a presentation to us that indicated that the period between 2030 and 2040 could be still quite tight. So that's why there may be that need for the policy to carry on to that period. We're then told that at 2040 there's a huge excess of water in the area, that they've got enough solutions coming online that there won't be a problem at that point. We're on the understanding, and our understanding is that 2030 date, which is when the Littlehampton water recycling plant is supposed to come online, that will be the ultimate solution that will mitigate the needs. But there is some slight concerns, as you can imagine, from all parties that may need to extend till that sort of 2040 period.
And then just a final question, if I may. It's kind of probably split into two parts in terms of some of the evidence we heard, certainly on the first day, in relation to Horsham, the submissions were that the water neutrality issue is in their view, like to have a significant effect on kind of delivery going forward. From Crawley Borough's perspective, and I appreciate you're kind of split between two water resource kind of zones, so you're not wholly caught within the Southern Waters area. In terms of when we come to look at housing delivery, certainly in the Part 2 hearings, have you kind of sense-checked or calibrated the kind of housing trajectory, if there is any kind of ramifications or bearings on the water neutrality issue and how that may affect your supply coming forward? And allied to that, from just a practical point of view, my assumption is every scheme now, even down to a single dwelling that comes forward within the water resource zone, is subject to presumably a project level habitat regulation assessment. And is the Borough Council resource to deal with that, so is that having a similar bearing on how you're sort of getting development through the sort of the planning process? So sorry, two parts to that. So trajectory first, and then sort of the practical aspect of dealing with presumably a significant uplift in project level habitat regs.
On the second point, I'm not sure if you're yes, I mean, there's no reason why you'd necessarily be aware. There is a kind of appropriate assessment in place whereby the council's been able to allow householder schemes to proceed. It may not be all householder, but domestic extensions, for example, that make up the bulk of householder applications. So that has kind of helped to free up that part of the system. In terms of cases where they do need a project level assessment, the process that has been followed so far, I think, has been that the developer puts in a water neutrality statement. The council can do, I guess there are three things. They might send it on to Natural England if we think it seems to stack up and is likely to be acceptable. Some are being sent currently to third-party consultants to at the expense of the developer for them to give a view before it continues on to Natural England. and that there are others where they don't, where just from an initial assessment there may appear to be kind of difficulties with the evidence that's been provided, and in that case it might just be returned to the applicant, and you know that they need to kind of look at it again. I mean, I think my colleagues in the council who have been more involved with this area are mindful of it, you know, an issue with resourcing of the work that we're doing, and that the LEP funding for the project manager is all we've had so far. So Mr. Gordon as a joint resource between the various authorities, and you know that's a case that chief executives and members have been sort of taking to government level for further support. You know, over the time that this issue has been this issue has been ongoing, and there were announcements with the autumn statement yesterday that whereby there was funding for Cambridge and for nutrient neutrality, but not for water neutrality in Sussex. So sort of, I think the council would sort of express a degree of disappointment. Well, the councils, I should say, would express a degree of disappointment from that perspective. In relation to the housing supply question, or the overall development question, I think what we would say is that the total amount of development that we would be anticipating over the local plan period is the same as we would be expecting were water neutrality not to have arisen. There are issues about timing. So at the time we did the housing trajectory that was submitted with the plan with the April 2023 base date, I mean, obviously we knew, you know, we were aware of the delays with water neutrality at that stage. I think at this stage, were we to kind of, on the basis of more recent information, to kind of look at those again, I think we might be minded to kind of build in further delays in respect of certain sites. But I don't, I mean, it's something we've been planning to kind of comment further on, really, for the 15th of December deadline. But so that you know, there may be some change in the kind of overall shape, if you like, of the housing trajectory, but the extent to that is yet fully to be kind of pinned down. I mean, it may not be so pronounced at the strategic level. It may be more a case of particular sites moving in terms of where they're placed within that.
Thank you for that. Yes, we'll look at that probably in more detail, and I think it's matter 6 in part 2. So yep, take the point. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else want to be heard? Good. Okay, well that concludes our questions, and concludes the first week of hearings as well. Just on this issue, I'd like to thank you for the detail and the clarity in the statements on this matter, which helped us quite a bit as I mentioned at the start, in an issue which is novel for us.
So just one final piece of housekeeping. We've indicated we had, obviously yesterday we didn't finish the discussion on the matter of Gatwick and safeguarding. We will be liaising through the programme officer probably in the next week or so, where we think the revised timetable is likely to be, and we'll obviously share that with the council and then with others. So we'll sort that out as soon as we can, just to let you know.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good Christmas and New Year. Thanks.
That sounds weird, doesn't it?